Mark McGwire will be returning to the Cardinals. Tony La Russa is rumored to be close to making a decision about returning to manage the St. Louis Cardinals in 2010. And with that came news via former Major Leaguer Brian McRae's Twitter account that his father, Hal McRae, who spent 5 years as the Cardinals hitting coach, will not be retained. McGwire would then replace McRae on the staff. There's the career resume for Mark McGwire. Played 16 seasons, 15 of which with Tony La Russa. 583 career home runs, tied for 8th all time. And he had 220 home runs with the St. Louis Cardinals, of course, through 2001. To me, I know the Manny Acta story is great that the Indians finally got their man. There were some good guys that interviewed for that job. But, I mean, if Mark McGwire becomes the hitting instructor for the St. Louis Cardinals, that's big news.
It's big news. I think it's good news because I think it's nice to see Mark McGwire to get back attached to this game of baseball. He was very important to the game of baseball. Now, what he did off the field, how he prepared to get ready, I don't know. I don't think any of us really know what actually happened. But I do know this. He has a love for the game of baseball, and I think he has a very good relationship with Tony La Russa. And I think there is something that he could bring to the table to the St. Louis Cardinals organization.
I agree totally, and it's another case of when you look, Tony La Russa is going to surround himself and his coaching staff, everyone he can, with people he not only likes, but he trusts. Him and Mac have a long, long relationship. You've seen it with Dave Duncan, how the loyalty that is there with La Russa, that's what he...
Mark McGwire is headed back to baseball and the St. Louis Cardinals. The former single-season home run record holder has been named the team's batting coach, replacing Hal McRae. The announcement came Monday when the Cards revealed that Tony La Russa is coming back to manage the team in 2010. La Russa, who was at the news conference, agreed to a one-year contract.
Yeah, I just check every year out, and every year you get older, you want to be more careful with committing to beyond that. That's all it is.
McGwire was not on hand, and the club said there will be no effort to protect the former slugger from reporters and questions about steroids. In March of 2005, he refused to answer questions about steroids during a well-publicized congressional hearing. McGwire hit a then-record 70 home runs in 1998 and retired in 2001 with 583 home runs. He has received just under 25% support from voters in his 3 appearances on the Hall of Fame ballot, well under the 75% needed. The 65-year-old La Russa had been mulling his future since the NL Central champs were swept in the first round of the playoffs by Los Angeles. La Russa managed McGwire for 15 of McGwire's 16 seasons. Jack Briggs, The Associated Press.
But he's got the whole thing, you know, the mechanics, the power of the mind, the understanding that you need to prepare with a lot of hard work. I think he's looking forward to the work, and I know a bunch of you are anxious to talk to him about whatever, but I think he's ready for it.
There's news in St. Louis on Monday. The Cardinals made 2 announcements. One was expected. The other came as something of a surprise. The Redbirds announced that in addition to Tony La Russa returning for his 15th season as skipper, he'll have a new hitting coach with him for 2010. Mark McGwire replaces Hal McRae on the coaching staff for next season as the former single-season home run king will make his first appearance in uniform since retiring after the 2001 season.
Well, I watched Mark the last few years, occasionally in California. You know, you've heard this. He's worked with Shu some. He worked with Chris Duncan some. He has some young kids that he works with a lot. He also has talked to him with Matt Holliday. You know, he has a number of guys that come by him. And I watched several of those sessions. I went, man, he has a really good approach that's fundamental. There's some differences to what he's teaching. But he's got the whole thing, you know, the mechanics, the power of the mind, the understanding that you need to prepare with a lot of hard work. And so I asked him, and it's a good time in his life. His kids are now in school, and his wife wants him to do it, and he agreed to do it. And the last thing I'll say about that is he's been hired to be our hitting coach because he can help our offense be better.
Haven't seen a lot of Mark McGwire since the end of his playing career, Billy.
No, but obviously he's been keeping himself busy. And we don't know, being on the outside, how much he's been involved in hitting and teaching hitting. I always like Mark McGwire. You certainly heard Tony La Russa talking about him right there. There is a great sense of loyalty with Tony La Russa and Mark McGwire. Mark McGwire's done some big things for him as a ball player, as Tony being the manager. So, you know what? Let's see what happens with this. But on the outside, when I look at it, he's been away from the game an awful long time. Tony must know something to just bring him back into the mix right at the big league level right now.
Well, I thought it was interesting that Tony said he went and watched these sessions go. But I look at it like he's given an opportunity for Mark to rehab his name and possibly for that opportunity for him to get to the Hall of Fame. It's going to get real interesting, though, Lark. You've been around this type of stuff before.
Yeah, yes, I have. And, you know, my thing and my concern is that it will be maybe a distraction to those hitters. I mean, the last thing that you want to do as a hitter, because you will struggle, is have to talk about something other than why exactly are you struggling. It was really peculiar to me that, you know, this announcement was made and Mark McGwire wasn't there at the press conference. You know, and there seemed to be kind of an air of, tension or whatever when Tony La Russa was talking to the media. And hopefully that won't roll over into the players. Players working with that hitting instructor is a very intimate situation because there's so many small things that you talk about physically and mentally. Hopefully that will not affect the players.
A lot of loyalty there. I think with the exception of Art Howe, that's the only manager that Mark McGwire ever played for in his long big league career. It'll be worth watching in St. Louis.
Now let's talk about the St. Louis Cardinals' new hitting coach, Mark McGwire. Yes, Mark McGwire is now going to be the hitting coach. We haven't heard from this guy in public for a number of years. So, number one, that makes this story very interesting. It will be interesting how Mark handles the questions and how his presence will be when he faces the media. You hope that Mark McGwire's presence doesn't affect the ball club, and everybody's asking more about Mark McGwire than they are the St. Louis Ball Club. But they'll get through that. Yes, there will be a storm come spring training, or maybe in the winter meetings when Mark is out there with the ball club representing the team. Everybody's got questions they've been storing up for a number of years. We'll see how he answers those. I think that will set the trend for the season going forward. But the second thing is, how will he affect their hitters? Mark has always been a great teacher. He's a great student of hitting, and he was always a great hitter. Not just for the power, but he actually hit for a good average when he was early on when he wasn't trying to hit home runs. I think he'll be a nice hitting coach. But the story here for me is Tony La Russa and his commitment and his depth and dedication to Mark McGwire. He knows what's coming. He understands the scrutiny that's coming with Mark McGwire, and he still stood up for somebody he's believed in and stood by all these years. Hats off to Tony for standing up for somebody and bringing him back to the fold. I think what La Russa's doing here is giving McGwire a chance to get out in public, rehabilitate his name, and possibly get elected to the Hall of Fame.
No other player in the history of Major League Baseball mashed home runs at a better rate than Mark McGwire. Big Mac put up prolific power numbers throughout his career, from his rookie season in 1987, blasting a Major League record 49 with the A's to the time he retired in 2001 with 583 career long balls as a member of the Cards. He finished his 16-year career with a .263 batting average and 1,414 RBIs. His 583 career homers rank him 8th all-time, and his one home run for every 10.61 ABs is the best ratio ever. In 1998, McGwire blasted a record-setting 70 home runs, and 5 times during his career, Big Mac led the majors in that category, including a stretch from 1996 to 1999, in which he averaged more than 61 per season. The fact that McGwire's achievements are now being questioned by many may ultimately hurt his chances to gain entry into the Hall.
Down the left field line, is it enough? Gone! There it is! 62!
I know how seriously I personally considered it before I presented it to our owner and general manager and our coaching staff, and I know the seriousness of my conversation with Mark, and I know how seriously he thought about it before he accepted. So I think it's going to work, and I think he has demonstrated to some of us that he has a lot to offer as a hitting coach. Part of what you get with Mark is not just his hitting expertise, he's an outstanding teammate. I think there are a couple guys that are the best teammates they've ever been around. So, his character, I don't think anybody in St. Louis has forgotten him walking away from him. $30 million. He didn't think physically. His back was sore and he couldn't perform it. Man, this guy's, we'll be lucky to have him. I know the conversation I've had with him. I know how excited he is. I know he's talked to our players. I think our fans are going to be really excited to see how hard he works. I think our club will be asked about him as a hitting coach, and then whenever he has his opportunity to talk, he'll say whatever he has to say, and that's part of his business. I know that once we get into camp, assuming he has his opportunity to speak, it's going to be about coaching. You just don't